All right, guys, we are going to start in on World War One. Now, remember, World War One is during the middle of all the stuff going on with imperialism and progressive era and the Gilded Age. All this stuff is happening at the same time. We just can't really talk about it all at once. We have to piecemeal it, all right? And so just so you see the bigger picture, a lot of things are happening not just in America, but in the global society, right? So it's globalization in degree with got some issues with Russia and the open door policy and China and all that kind of stuff happening, and people are really in this whole idea of nationalism, very focused on their own country and things that are happening for us as a country, not only in America but for other countries expanded out. Okay, so lots of conflicts, a lot of small little groupings, but World War One really does really bring us to a look at the globalization of the world and the idea that how involved are we in other people's business? How involved are we in other people's affairs, right? And that's one of the things that we've got to make sure that we look at in this whole idea of a world conflict, all right? So this was initially supposed to be called the War to End All Wars, right? The Great War. That's another term for this. But unfortunately, as we well know, it wasn't. But for them at the time, remember, history is about people and their experiences, what they had a interest in. All right, and what you'll find is at the end of the war, it brings something to us that we didn't really think about, and that is unfortunately a pandemic. Yes, one of the things that we're right in the middle of right now happened back then too. It's a flu pandemic of 1919, and lasted for quite a while and happened. So all right, let's get going with this. This is World War One. Now this is a presentation that you will watch or can watch at the end of this, but there's some great videos that talk about this, and boy, if we were in class we would be talking about this and showing you these videos. But please take advantage of watching these. Click on the video links, click on the presentations. They're not very long. They're 2 to 3 minute videos, so definitely something we have. So this one word, it's a great one because it just talks about the war being kind of pointless, useless, a waste. It made no impact on the world at all, and it's kind of an interesting one. This next one talks about nationalism and the way that people responded to each other. And of course, in this war, there's a lot of firsts. There's a lot of unique things that happen. We have our first aircraft carrier. We have our first use of chemical warfare. All that kind of stuff is kind of an interesting one. So take a second to watch that one as well. And of course, there's a bet you didn't know. This is where you get the trench coat. This is where you get some interesting things. We have used trenches before, but not really to the end of this. And of course, this is where you get your first flamethrower and you get your first tank, all that kind of stuff, the mechanized part of war. This is a little bit longer video, but they definitely do a good job. If you are a war person that enjoys learning a little bit more about this, this is great. So let's talk about the long-term causes. There's a couple of long-term causes that I want you to focus on. So nationalism, the idea that a devotion to interests and culture of one's nation, and you are so focused on that. And that, guys, a lot of times we think about that as a bad thing, but let's really think about that. Okay, when you are willing to defend and fight for your country, that is not a bad thing. There is something to be said for being loyal to one's nationality and being proud of your heritage, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's only when we have a sense of my country is better than yours and my country is going to do something to yours because your country sucks. I mean, that really is where the problem comes in. To be the pride of your nation is not necessarily a bad thing. All right, so just think about that for a second. Okay, so one of those the long-term causes is that countries competed each other with each other for power. That's the problem that we've run into, all right? And of course, imperialism is a big part of that as well. So European nations had built empires. Of course, we've talked about England before. Across the world, countries begin to compete over colonies. Now, remember, competing over colonies is really all about resources and economic control for those resources, okay? So another long-term cause is militarism, right? The development of armed forces and their use as a foreign policy tool. Now, we've talked about the big stick policy with Roosevelt and, speak softly, carry big stick. Well, countries are competing over having the strongest military. And you can say a good defense is to have a strong offense, right? That's another possibility of how you defend yourself, but there's a big part. And now really the long-term cause, if you boil everything down to one of the biggest things is the alliance system. Now, this is called a collective defense, and you start war with one of these countries meant starting war with somebody else. So you got the triple entente. Now think about this. This is pre-war alliances. This is before the start of the war. So entente, it sounds like French word, right? So the French, France, Britain, and Russia. Now, you notice the United States is not involved in this, all right? So it's Russia. Now, Russia actually pulls out of the war later on because of what's called the Bolshevik Revolution. We'll talk more about that. That's where the communists come into play. We'll talk more about that later, all right? And then you have the Triple Alliance. So these are pre-war alliances, okay? You got Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. Now, this is a map of those. Now, you will need to know where things are in the European society. Now, I know we don't talk a lot about geography, we need to more, but this is a very much a pre-war alliance. So you got France, Great Britain, and Russia. So in between all these guys is the German Empire, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. Now, Italy will later on switch sides, all right? They're kind of wishy-washy in one sense, but they're going to do that. Now, I want you to understand something. Okay, alliances are powerful. Alliances are your buddy, your best bud that has something said about them over here by somebody else, and you're wanting to defend them. And so now you go and you talk to that person and you start, making stuff about it. And we do it all the time on social media. We do it, guys. You know as well as I do that you defend somebody that can defend themselves, but or maybe can't, but you're standing up for them. And then this person over here gets, their feelings hurt, and then this person over here, and now you have one side over the other side. Guys, politics is filled with this kind of stuff, this alliance system. Well, I support this guy. Well, if you don't support me, I don't support you. No, 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 no. Right? That's what happens in this whole idea of alliance system, and it can be good, but it can be very bad. So just think about that on how those things happen. All right. So the short-term cause, again, big long-term cause of the alliances. Well, something happens, right? This Archduke Franz Ferdinand is the heir to the Austrian throne, right? You just saw the map where Austria is, Austria-Hungary, right? And so he's assassinated in Bosnia. There's a lot of stuff going on between the people feeling the Bosnian people groups saying, I don't want to be ruled, and Austria-Hungary say, well, you're going to be ruled, and this is the whole against idea of the Serbians. And so Serbia is declared on war. Well, they are friends, allies with Russia, right? And so Russia says, oh, no, you don't. And then they declare war on Austria-Hungary, and Austria-Hungary is, they're the small guy, and they are friends with Germany, and Germany goes, oh, no, you didn't. And they just, fight. And then, of course, when Germany causes conflict on Russia, France and Britain get involved, and bada bing, bada boom, Russia or World War I has begun. So this is a great image that talks about it's like, if you touch me, I'll, and then if you move like I'll, and if you hit that little feller. Of course, I don't know why Russia is talking in that language, but and that's just how it works, right? That's the whole point of this. So let's just look at this. You have the pre-war alliance system, okay, is a group of people. Let's go back to that. Okay, so we've got the Triple Entente and the Triple Alliance. Now you have the Allied powers. Don't mistake those with the Allies in World War II. That's kind of a little bit of a different group, all right? But the Allied powers and then the Central Powers. So you have two groups of allies, pre-war and then during the war. So Allied powers here, Great Britain, France, Russia. U.S. is, of course, later going to join that group. We try to stay out of it. We're only actually in the war for 18 months, a little over. We don't join until 1917, right? War ends in 1918. But the Central Powers are Germany, Austria-Hungary, Ottoman Empire. And so here is that map that really shows where that process is. Now, you see that they're neutral countries. You got Spain that's neutral, Sweden, Norway. This is Denmark, the Netherlands in here. And then, of course, Switzerland, who's right in the middle of all of it. And thankfully, Switzerland stays neutral for both wars, although that, depending on how you look at that, what neutral is. Albania here. But a lot of these guys really do get taken over. And this is where it gets a little problematic here, because you've got the Ottoman Empire over here and the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. And, of course, these guys in the middle get kind of taken out all together. All right, so that's the big picture about World War I. Now we're going to get into a little bit more specifics later on, but the big picture World War I, that's what we got. All right, so hopefully you'll enjoy this part of the class, and we'll go from there. All right, guys, bye.